Our dad, he had advanced liver disease, and he just wanted that option to end his life.
There's no way Dad would do something like this.
This is what he wanted. I just didn't expect him to do it so soon.
I see you have some paperwork in your hand.
Yeah, that's the end-of-life paperwork that my wife filled out with her doctor, and there's a DNR too.
Well, what's happening is I just found out that my sister took our mother to a doctor to get some medication to end her life.
My mother is terminally ill, and this is her wish.
I just don't want you girls to fight. It's my choice.
Okay, you need to stop this, okay?
Okay.
The paramedics are on their way, but Tom, is your father still alive?
Yes, he's still alive, but my family's with him right now. He's fallen asleep after taking his medication, so if you don't mind, our family would really like some privacy. We just don't need your help.
I was with 3 very close family members as they died, and it was very difficult for me. I'm a law enforcement officer, I'm a district attorney. I can make things better. I can help people find justice, but there was nothing I could do for these 3 people. I felt completely helpless. Each of them turned to me and said, make it stop. Please, the amount of pain, agony, the dignity, I hate everything about this. Please, please make it stop. And I knew I couldn't. And that as a matter of law, they had to suffer. And that didn't seem right to me. This isn't for everybody. This is for a very small percentage of our communities. But for those people who want this option, they should be able to have it.
As you can imagine, when someone receives a diagnosis for a terminal illness, it is quite traumatic, not only for the person, but for their family and their friends. And there's a conversation that happens between the terminally ill person and their physician, their attending physician, about what their end-of-life options could be. And it could range from all the curative options possible to a multitude of other more palliative options like hospice or voluntary stopping eating and drinking. And an option under the End-of-Life Option Act that's newly authorized in California is medical aid in dying.
Penal Code Sections 443 through 443.22 establishes the requirements to successfully enact the end-of-life option for an individual. This is a new code section. However, it does not abrogate or delete the current existing Penal Code Section 401. 401 deals with assisting suicides, and it states that a person who advises, aids, or abets or encourages the commission of a suicide by an individual is still guilty of a felony.
Any new law brings about a period of time in which we're uncomfortable with how we deal with something because it's new to us. And so starting to understand as we move along that it's not just the words, this is an End-of-Life Option Act that allow you to turn around and leave, but it's the totality of the circumstances that you look at.
This is a new paradigm in the state of California for the medical community because no other time before have we been involved so intimately with the end of life and the allowing of the patient to make their decision based on their wants and needs.
The estimates that I've heard that there could be potentially 1,500 cases a year. And in most cases, law enforcement's never going to know that these have occurred. The arrangements are going to be made with the family through their physician and possibly through a hospice, and law enforcement will never be notified.
When someone is terminally ill and their pain becomes unbearable, do they have control of how and when they die? With the passing of AB 15 and its enactment in June 2016, a terminally ill person has the right to lawfully end their own life under the End-of-Life Option Act. But for law enforcement officers, will this change how you respond to a death call? Why would law enforcement even be involved at all? How will you identify and confirm that a death might be an End-of-Life Option Act case? And are there new crimes made possible with the passing of the End-of-Life Option Act? Hello, I'm Mark Bailey, and I'll be your host. California is the 5th state that has authorized a medical aid in dying law. It is expected that approximately 34,000 terminally ill people will make a request of their physicians, but that only 1,500 prescriptions will be written each year. It is estimated that 60 to 70% of those prescriptions will actually be ingested. So, how does someone receive a prescription and utilize the End-of-Life Option Act? First of all, to be eligible, they must satisfy 4 requirements. They must be an adult, be a resident of California, be terminally ill with a prognosis of 6 months or less to live, and are mentally capable of making their own health care decisions. After these eligibility requirements are fulfilled, there is a process that the terminally ill person needs to complete before receiving the medical aid in dying prescription. This process can take as little as 15 days, but typically takes 3 to 6 weeks. First, they must make a verbal request to both their attending physician as well as a consulting physician, separated by a 15-day waiting period. Then, the terminally ill person must give their doctor a written request that has been signed by 2 witnesses. Finally, 48 hours prior to ingesting the medication, they must also sign a final attestation form. It is imperative that the patient is making this request voluntarily. While law enforcement is not required to know all of the intricacies of how a person obtains the medical aid in dying medication, as a first responder, they should be knowledgeable in the law. The goal of this video is to educate law enforcement on how to best respond and assist our community in the event they are called to an End-of-Life Option Act case. This video will cover how to verify and how should law enforcement properly respond, investigation of a dynamic situation, and the differences between the new law and Penal Code Section 401, assisting a suicide, de-escalating family members who may not agree with the decision made by the terminally ill person, investigation techniques when someone is reporting a death, and lastly, some final thoughts from our subject matter experts. This course is designed to be facilitated in a group setting. Before conducting a group training session, you should review and become familiar with the material in this program. Open and print the facilitator guide and go through the program yourself before putting the course on for others. As the facilitator, your job is to engage your students in constructive, free-flowing discussion on the key learning points of this training topic. Use the tools provided in this program to stimulate critical thinking and situational awareness in the group by viewing the scenarios, expert interviews, and discussion videos. Questions and activities are provided to promote group interaction and discussion on the training topic. Customize the learning experience by applying your agency policy and procedures to the training concepts. Segments in this program accommodate shorter training periods, such as during roll call training sessions. Track your students' progress through the entire program. As the facilitator, you need to know that your students have gone through the material and sufficiently mastered the learning objectives. Once the students have successfully completed the program, submit your training roster to POST for CPT credit. Following this plan will help to create an environment for the debate of ideas, sharing of wisdom based on experience, and encourage a greater understanding of local policies and procedures. We wish you and your agency all the best in successfully implementing this program. This course is designed to be facilitated in a group setting. However, when that is not possible, here are some instructions for getting the most out of this training program so that you may receive continuing professional training or CPT credit. Obtain permission from your agency trainer or supervisor to view the course for training credit, and let them know you will be viewing the program. This will give them some time to review the course themselves and be prepared to discuss it with you later on. Open and print the student study guide so that you can take notes and fill out responses to the questions and activities. Think about how the training concepts presented apply to your agency policy and procedures. You may view the scenarios, expert interviews, and discussion videos several times to assist you in providing responses. Keep track of your progress as you complete the segments in this course. When you have finished the entire program, inform the trainer that you would like to review the course with them. Send them your completed student study guide prior to meetings so that they have had a chance to review your responses. Scheduling a face-to-face meeting with your trainer is the best way to review your work on the course. If this is not possible, arrange a phone call meeting. but in either case, allow time to review and discuss your responses. Your supervisor or trainer may require additional work or feedback from you before giving CPT credit. They may want to evaluate your understanding of how the training points relate to your agency policy, for instance. It is their discretion in determining whether you have adequately completed the course. Following these instructions will give you the best opportunity not only to receive CPT credit, but to grasp the training concepts, benefit from the experience of others, and apply the training and experience to your local policy and procedures. We wish you and your agency all the best in successfully completing this course.
Understanding the law is key to everything that we do.
Just knowing what End-of-Life Option Act is going to help them determine what type of death investigation they're doing.
Since this is an unknown for all of us, it's important that deputies or officers in the field contact their local coroner to find out how these deaths are going to be handled, to get a working knowledge of what the expectations are of them out in the field and what the expectations are of the deputy coroner once they make that phone call.
In law enforcement, sometimes we're jaded and we look at everything as a potential violation of a crime. And sometimes laws are put into effect to keep that from happening and to allow people to do things without being seen as criminals or without those actions being seen as being wrong. As officers, we need to realize that and sometimes approach the situations not as a law enforcement officer, but as a member of the community, and reach out to those people and support them, especially in cases like this in their time of need.
When they respond to these calls, they need to be able to stabilize the situation, de-escalate any crisis situations that are occurring, and then be of help to the family, whether that be consoling them or helping them find resources.
When an officer enters a situation where someone is choosing medical aid in dying, I just want to emphasize that it is an enormously profound experience, a sacred experience for many of these patients and their families. They're saying goodbye. This is extraordinarily sensitive. And I think it's just really important to recognize that as officers engage and try to assess a situation.
And so if law enforcement officers educate themselves in the law and how to follow the law and what's expected, there'll be nothing new for them to have to deal with. They'll just be doing their job and doing their job with the same respect, warmth, sophistication, and understanding that they've always done their job.
It was someone's choice to do this, and they were allowed to die with dignity rather than in pain.
So the California End of Life Option Act became effective on June 9th. And at that point, terminally ill people who are eligible for the law can make a request of their doctor for a prescription for medical aid in dying medication that they can choose to take and self-administer if their pain or their suffering becomes unbearable.
Being a new law in the state of California, it is still uncertain exactly how many people will choose to utilize the End of Life Option Act. In most cases, law enforcement won't know that the act has been exercised, and it will likely be rare that first responders will ever be called. If you are dispatched, should your behavior be different from any other death call? And how would you verify that this is an End of Life Option Act case?
River City 911, what are you reporting?
My wife just died.
What is your address?
1258 Meadow Lane.
And what is the phone number you're calling from?
916-227-4895.
Tell me exactly what happened.
My wife's had cancer and took some medication to end her life.
Is she conscious?
No,
Is she breathing?
no.
I'm sending the paramedics to help you now. Stay on the line and I'll tell you exactly what to do next.
No, she's dead.
Sir, why do you think that she's dead?
She had stage 4 cancer. She decided a few weeks back to use the End of Life Option Act.
Sir, can you explain to me what you're talking about?
She basically received a prescription from her doctor for life-ending medication. It all happened really fast, and I just don't know what to do now.
Okay, I've dispatched a patrol unit and medics.
No, I don't need any of that. She has a DNR. She just wanted to go on her own terms. She was in a lot of pain.
Sir, the paperwork will be needed to be verified. Do you have the DNR and paperwork for her doctor?
Yes, I have them.
Okay, my partner's dispatching units. Just stay on the line with me.
2 Victor 1, respond with paramedics to a medical aid call. 1258 Meadow Lane, female not conscious or breathing, possible full arrest.
2 Victor 1, copy. Any further on the details?
Affirmative. Per the RP, he states that his wife ingested life-ending medication. RP mentioned that she chose the End of Life Option Act. The RP is her husband who is on the scene. Patient is unconscious and not breathing, and the RP has a DNR. He's been advised that medics are also en route.
2 Victor 1 copies. End of Life Option Act? This is new to me.
How you doing, guys?
Good. How you doing?
Good. All right. So we've got the woman is deceased, and there's no one else in the house right now.
Okay. Can you stay with him and get some more information? I'm gonna go talk to the RP.
Okay, sounds good.
Sir, I'm sorry for your loss. I'm Officer Mike Hogle with the River City PD. What's your name?
I'm Jeff Reed. I'm the one who called 911. I'm just kind of rattled right now. Everything happened so fast. I figured it's Sunday and all the mortuaries were closed, so that's why I called 911. Was that okay? Or?
Yeah, that's fine. I understand that you're here alone. Is there anyone we can call for you?
No, my wife and I moved here like about a year ago so she could receive medical treatment, so we don't have any family here.
Okay. Was hospice involved?
No, it was just me and my wife.
So is there anybody I can call for you? Or?
No, thank you. It's too early. I don't want to wake anybody.
Very good. I just want to try to be supportive. I see you have some paperwork in your hand.
Yeah.
You mind if I look at it?
No. That's the end of life paperwork that my wife filled out with her doctor, and there's a DNR too. She didn't want any life-saving measures. She'd been suffering from acute cancer symptoms for the last 2 weeks, and she just was in so much pain. So she, like a few hours ago, she decided that she'd had enough and it was time. So it all happened so fast. I'm just kind of surprised.
I understand. I'm sorry. Is there a number for the doctor that prescribed the life-ending medications?
Yeah, it's. I think it's on this form right here at the bottom.
Very good. I see that. Excuse me for a minute. I'm gonna go talk to my partner, and I'll be right back.
Sure. Thanks.
Well, it appears all the paperwork's in order. Do you mind sitting with the reporting party?
Sure.
His name's Jeff.
Okay.
Hello, is this Dr. Gray? This is Officer Mike Hogel from the River City PD. Thank you, sir.
Hey, Mike.
I just got off the phone with the doctor who issued the life-ending medication. He also confirmed with me the condition of the patient and her description, which matches everything we see here. And I also confirmed that he signed the DNR.
Okay, and this is it?
And this is it.
All right, thank you. Okay, everything looks good. Let's go ahead and call the coroner then and get a waive on it.
Okay.
And then we'll have you guys wait around till family and friends shows up. And if we can need to help out with that, let's do that. Help him out as far as getting arrangements to the mortuary also.
Of course.
You know, he's obviously going through a lot, and we need to support him any way we can.
Very good.
Okay. All right, guys. Let me know if you need anything.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, guys.
What do you guys think about that?
Well, it's different. It's not something we're used to doing quite yet, so it's going to be different on our first one when we run into that scenario.
Okay. As far as the RP, why do you guys think he called 911?
I think, it's going to be a traumatic event no matter how much you try and prepare yourself for it or talk about it with your family or friends or whoever you're supporting. I think it's traumatic and it's scary, and once it happens, especially for him, now he's alone. Nobody's there. So you have to understand that you're kind of there to console him and help him through the next step as well as actually doing your job.
Perfect. Would we stay at scene?
I wouldn't see it as a requirement. I would ask the RP if he wanted us to stay around or maybe notify a chaplain, department chaplain to respond, or a crisis volunteer to come stand by with him so he's not just being left alone on scene.
Yeah. Like the way they handled it. The way they approached it. What do you think about their actions as far as the cops? What do you think they did right?
I personally liked it. You still gotta do your full investigation, do your full protocol. I liked how they called the doctor just to confirm it was a natural death.
Right.
How the paperwork was correct. So.
Okay. As far as with the officers, verifying all the information. Do you think it's really realistic for us to get a hold of a doctor that fast, though? I mean, I know it's a video and that type of stuff. Anyone have?
I think it's going to be just like any other time we respond on a death in the field. It's sometimes you're going to get an answering service, but the important part is just to try and make contact the best you can and verify somebody's going to sign the death certificate and verify that this was this is exactly what occurred.
Does anyone know if there's a requirement that they have paperwork indicating that they have an end-of-life option act, that they're utilizing that? Do you know if it's a mandate that they actually have?
It's not a mandate, and I think that's where it can maybe get confusing sometimes where, with this perfect scenario, he already told them exactly what happened. We knew it was an end-of-life option act.
Sometimes out on the field, we're going to encounter times where they don't have the paperwork. So it's just something that we have to go there and try to facilitate and help them out, try to do a little bit of investigation, try to figure out information from the family or doctors, someone.
If we didn't get a doctor on the phone, like you said, maybe we get their exchange or the answer, because it is a weekend. I think he indicates it's a Sunday, it's early in the morning. Is there any other way we might verify that someone used the end-of-life option act?
Well, I know that a lot of times they'll have a lot of family there. I mean, at least you had the husband there at that point. Okay. I'm sure there's going to be, it's a process. It takes a while to get to that point, and I'm sure there's going to be some sort of medical record or documentation, or if they have a copy of their the last, I think it's called, what they're calling it, the attestation that you have to fill out. Stuff like that can help you kind of put that together and figure out that that's what they chose to do.
Any other things that we can look for inside the house that may help us indicate that this person utilized the End-of-Life Option Act?
There may be a video of the person before death stating their wishes and their reasons, and there may be a will or some sort of note left by the deceased that's been signed by them and dated.
Cool, good. Anything else?
Or the medication itself.
Perfect, medication themselves.
We'd be looking for the medication. It probably wouldn't be too far.
Contacting the pharmacist on the label and the pharmacy and confirming that medication was prescribed to the deceased and it is the End-of-Life Act medication that's been prescribed and issued for the paperwork is a good option for confirming that what you're seeing is actual.
Oh, yeah, that's perfect. All right. So we have that as an option, just in case we can't get a hold of the doctor. He started to engage the RP about the End of Life Option Act. What does that do for you as far as your index of suspicion when he's giving you all the answers? What does that do for you?
I think it kind of answers a lot of questions that you may be having. He's got everything lined up, just didn't know how to deal with it once the incident had happened.
We may need to step out of our normal investigative routine, and depending on how many different multiple RPs there are family members that you speak to, you may get the same story from everybody. And in the absence of the paperwork, sometimes you just have to take the face value.
Yeah. I guess we're just looking at it as a regular death, and we just have to do our due diligence, do our investigation, and which will probably get us to the point where we're able to verify that the deceased used the end of life option. That was a lot to take in. A lot of new stuff for us. All right. Well, hey, be safe, and let's go to Nate.
Oftentimes we see it where everybody wants it to remain very natural, very peaceful, and then someone at the last minute becomes quite concerned and they call 911. And then here come the cops, here come the fire department, and that really isn't what they wanted, but they rang the bell.
Once someone calls 911, we must act as dispatchers. We must act as responders. We do have questioning that would allow us to reduce the response perhaps for the fire department and ambulance, but we still need to send somebody.
There really is no role for law enforcement or for calling 911 when a process goes smoothly and as intended.
It's hugely important for us to be able to create a mental picture for responding units that is as close and accurate to what the caller's information is that they're giving us. And then it sets the picture for this as a completely voluntary application of a new law. So there isn't a violation.
I don't see a change in what they do. When they knock on the front door, they need to ask the appropriate questions, determine what's taking place. And once they establish that it is the End of Life Option Act that this person has chosen to pursue in regards to, ending their life, then I think once they have that information, it's still a death investigation, but it's in the sense it's just documented in the report that, hey, this is what occurred. There's a law that allows it to occur, and make sure that if there's any coordination with the coroner's office that takes place.
I think the first thing you have to deal with when you arrive on scene is you got to get a sense of what the emotions are at the scene. If somebody is emotionally distraught and upset, the first thing you need to do is calm them and let them know that you're there to help.
Under the End of Life Option Act, there really is no specific paperwork that a patient or their family has to have on hand. Most of the forms are sent into the doctor's offices and they won't be available in the home. There's no requirement for that. The most that an officer may find is a form called an attestation form, which the terminally ill person signs, and their family is supposed to turn in to the attending physician after the person self-administers the medication.
We'd get the doctor's name and phone number from a document, not from one of the witnesses in the room. So it would either be the prescription bottles or a document that they had from the doctor's office. Just someone saying this person's a doctor and yes, go ahead and call them. There's no way to know whether it is a doctor on the phone.
It is really important that a law enforcement officer or a paramedic on scene make contact with the physician. And when they do, tell the physician exactly what's going on, what they've encountered, who the patient is, and ask them, did they prescribe these medications? Are they the treating physician? And would they even sign a death certificate?
The physicians involved with these patients, they should have the expectation that law enforcement and first responders may be calling them to confirm, yes, this is the option the patient chose, yes, I was involved in their care, and yes, a prescription was given after completing the criteria for the Option Act itself.
They can ask the question, explain the situation, and hopefully the doctor will comply with the information, because that's going to be in the best interest of the decedent's family and friends who are sitting there waiting to know whether it's really over.
A secondary option could be for the officer to call the pharmacist, which is the pharmacy number is often on the prescription bottle.
It can be very frustrating, however, because pharmacies are under no responsibility to advise you that they participated in the end-of-life option.
As with any death investigation that you go to, you'll use empathy and caring for the people that are there while you're looking at your index of suspicion to determine, is this an attended death or an unattended death or a suspicious death? And as you look at the different elements that you see as you arrive on scene and you deal with the family that are there, you'll make your determination and move forward with the appropriate investigation.
If they ask the right questions in regards to what we know about the new law, which would be terminally ill, 6 months, if you're getting some of those answers that indicate that it's clear that they're talking about the end-of-life option, then I think that would be enough for the officers to say, okay, we understand, we respect your privacy, and there's no need for any further investigation at that point.
Officers, when they're arriving at the scene of a potential end-of-life option act, are going to have to look at two things. One is, and they've learned this all the way from back in the academy, is Penal Code Section 4, which is applying the spirit of the law versus the letter of the law, which means they need to look at the legislative intent of the law. In this case, the legislative intent of the End-of-Life Option Act is to allow an individual to die with dignity and with peace. This needs to be balanced with the potential abuse of this section and also the application of Penal Code Section 401, which is assisting in suicide. The officer is going to have to look at the facts and circumstances on a case-by-case basis to make determination of whether the investigation needs to proceed forward or whether the person's dignity and peace outweighs that need.
Asking questions to determine that the medications were indeed prescribed and looking at the totality of the scene will be very important in this type of death case. But what if the terminally ill patient isn't dead and is being assisted? In this next segment, we will look at determining the distinction between the End-of-Life Option Act and assisted suicide.
In my mind, there is not a thin line between the End-of-Life Option Act and assisted suicide. They are very different. In assisted suicide, it means someone assists you in committing suicide. In end-of-life option, there is no suicide that someone is assisting you in committing, because on all the legal documents, death certificate and everything else, suicide is not listed as the cause of death. This law has determined that the cause of death will be the underlying illness. So, for all legal purposes, this isn't suicide. Second thing, this isn't being assisted by somebody else. This is the decedent's decision to end their own life. They have to take the medication. They have to push the medication through a feeding tube. Whatever it is, they have to take the act. So this is neither legally suicide nor assisted.
The End-of-Life Option Act brought about a big change as I see it. There are not large numbers yet that I'm aware of. Actually, if it's done correctly, I'm not going to be aware of many of them. But I think that it brings an option to families, to those people who are terminally ill. It gives them an option in which they can openly discuss it. They don't have to hide in the shadows any longer. They're able to perhaps plan the way in which they wish to go out on their own terms. And many people, when they're terminal, they don't have that option.
Understanding the difference between assisted suicide and the End-of-Life Option Act will greatly help when speaking with grieving families. This new law will give those individuals the opportunity to make an active choice in their own death.
Oh, you ready?
Yeah. She suffered for so long.
I know. Let's go.
It's okay, honey. You can say goodbye.
Oh.
Bye.
Bye.
Miss Gladys. How are you?
Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. I saw so many people showing up and your dad has passed.
No, not yet. We're just about to give him something to help him along.
Help him along?
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Tell your father I've been praying for him.
I will. Do you want this on your bedside table, Dad, or?
No, I'm ready.
Okay. Now remember, the doctor said it was gonna taste bad and you need to drink it kind of quick, okay? So I have some orange juice here if you need it, all right?
I love you all.
Oh, officers.
Hello, sir. We received a radio call of a possible assisted suicide.
Oh, my father's dying, but it's not a suicide.
What is your name, sir?
Tom Lucas. Like I said, it's not a suicide. This was planned.
Well, the paramedics are on their way, but Tom, is your father still alive?
Yes, he's still alive, but my family's with him right now. He's fallen asleep after taking his medication, so if you don't mind, our family would really like some privacy. We just don't need your help.
Well, we're very sorry about your father, sir. We respect your privacy, but could you explain a little more about the medication to us?
Sure. He was diagnosed terminally ill about 6 months ago. His doctor prescribed medication that will assist in medical aid in dying, so he doesn't have to die in pain. He'll die in peace. The process is entirely legal, so I ask again, why are you two here?
I'm sorry to hear about your father. However, we got a radio call that asked us to check on his welfare.
I understand.
Do you have any paperwork or anything else that would show that your father made that choice to use the End of Life Option Act?
No, I don't have any paperwork.
How you doing, sir?
Hi.
Ingested the medication.
Sorry to cause you any more stress, sir, but do you have a DNR or any kind of an advance directive?
No, we didn't think you needed it.
Oh, would you mind if we took a look at your dad just to make sure he's okay?
No. We really appreciate your assistance and support, but my family just wants to be left alone during this time. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Let's talk about the call. It came over as assisted suicide. So what is the difference between assisted suicide and the End of Life Option Act?
Well, End of Life Option Act is a perfectly legal way for someone to end their life prior to succumbing to their terminal illness. There's a process. You have to meet with doctors. It takes a couple weeks for it to go through. There's a written statement, oral statements that you make to the doctors, and it's something that has to play out before you even have the medication prescribed to you. So it's got a lot more checks and balances to it. And assisted suicide is a crime. It's suspicious in a lot of ways because there's nothing to document that that's actually the person's wishes. Whether they have a terminal illness or not, there's nothing to document that they had the right state of mind to make that decision.
How important is it for the family regarding the language that you use with them?
Well, it's crucial because obviously this family member might not be comfortable with the term suicide. They went through the legal means to make this humane and accessible to the family, and to call it something that it's not might upset them and may cause you to lose some ground with getting traction with getting more information from that person.
So let's just say that this was your guys' call. Would any of you go inside the house?
I personally will.
You would? Tell me why you go inside, Riddell.
The dispatch was a welfare check, a possible assisted suicide. My main focus is just going in there, just looking at the person. I don't have to hang out there, but I'm gonna go in there, just make sure everything is okay. Because sometimes the radio call that you get is not actual the thing that once you get on the scene.
Okay. Or your thought process basically is based upon the fact that you got a welfare check, that it came over as an assisted suicide, and you pretty much you want to get inside the house to see what you have type of thing. Okay. But could we slow it down a little bit to maybe not have to enter the house and maybe do a pre-investigation at the door?
Absolutely. I think at some point the call went from assisted suicide as a dispatch to an End of Life Act scenario. The answers that the homeowner was giving me, they satisfied my curiosities, and I didn't feel comfortable at that point forcing my way into the home against his wishes.
Do you think we have any legal right to enter the house?
in my mind, I can't articulate forcing my way into the home to check on the welfare of that subject at that point.
Okay.
Kind of like with any radio call, you kind of have to ask yourself, what do you have? If we're going to force ourselves to check on somebody, it's got to be something that's exigent for us to make entry into somebody's house. And based on what he's saying, I don't see any kind of exigent circumstance. It seems like it's a legal decision that was made, and they're not the ones who called for help. It's another RP who's not involved in it, and we have nothing else to add to our legal standing to basically force entry into a house to check on somebody.
Well, let me ask you this. Let's talk about the son. When the son shows up to the door, did you feel like what he was saying to you would rise your level of suspicion?
No. I felt he was answering all the questions appropriately. It would have been nice to see some paperwork or a prescription, perhaps.
What about interviewing the RP? What kind of information could the RP provide us to actually lower our suspicion?
And I think that's the kind of the point too, is based on just evaluating what he says, it lowers your suspicion. But if you go contact the RP and she tells you exactly what he said, she knows that he's dying. That's why she came over there in the first place.
Exactly.
She can even verify for you that he's terminally ill. And she just obviously doesn't know about it, or doesn't agree with it, or whatever it is, but it'll basically substantiate the fact that, hey, this is a conscious decision, there's nothing illegal going on here. And she even knows that he was terminally ill, and the statement that he made to her when she came knocking on the door was that they had medication to help ease the process. So all of that together would pretty much put together what he said, what she said, everything would seem like it's an end-of-life option act.
Is the way we react going to be really important to the family when it's all said and done?
Yes, and I think one of the best ways to handle it is to not overreact to it and not thrust ourselves into something that really doesn't concern us overly that much. This is a family affair, and I think sometimes knowing when to kind of let it be is just as important as knowing what to say. You can be empathetic, but at the same time also knowing when your job is, you've done your due diligence, your job is done, and it's time to let them be.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, me personally, when watching this video, I kind of like feel like he should be with his father. He should be with his father towards, those last moments instead of dealing with us, dealing with the fire department. So what do you guys think about that?
A lot of times the family doesn't want law enforcement or paramedics on scene. They're uncomfortable with it. And out of respect for the family, you do your due diligence investigation and you move on.
Anything else on this one?
In my experience with these types of calls, Sarge, it's more of an opportunity to offer public services or resources to the family than leave on a bad note with them.
Exactly. I appreciate that. All right. Well, thanks a lot. Let's hit it.
The End of Life Option Act is very clear, actually states it, that exercising the option for medical aid in dying is not suicide. It is not assisted suicide. It is not euthanasia. It cannot be called that and is not considered that.
One thing that an officer is going to need to analyze at the scene is whether or not Penal Code Section 443 has been complied with, or whether or not they were assisting in a suicide.
The End of Life Option Act gives the power and control to the patient, whereas euthanasia, someone else has that power and control.
I would say the vast majority of suicides that we see are people who are terminally ill. I think that it gives them opportunity to plan their own demise. It still allows them to be ultimately in control. And I think that one of the things that I hear and I read, unfortunately, on many suicide notes is that they've truly lost control of everything. And this was the one thing that they could at least have some control of.
When officers are documenting the investigation of an End-of-Life Option Act through either an event report or an actual investigation report, Penal Code Section 443.18 specifically mandates that these type of End-of-Life Option Act cases not be referred to as a suicide.
It could be offensive if they were to actually document in the report that it was a suicide, and the family, for whatever reasons, wants a copy of that report. That would, it's not properly classified.
Under the End of Life Option Act, the terminally ill person is required to self-administer the aid in dying prescription. And the reason for that self-administration requirement is that the ingestion of the medication must be voluntary.
Now, it's not against the law for a person to be present when the End-of-Life Option Act drug is administered, and it's not against the law for an individual to prepare or help in preparing the drug that is administered for the end-of-life option. However, it is against the law for that individual to administer or assist in the administering of the drug that causes the death of the person.
Now, that doesn't mean that a family member or a care provider couldn't help them or assist them. The care provider can mix the medicine, the care provider could help them sit up, could actually hold a cup for the terminally ill person to drink the medication. When the person makes the decision that they want to ingest, self-administer and ingest the medication, normally what happens, there are farewells, goodbyes that are made with the terminally ill person and their family. And then the person might have, a trusted family member, friends, medical providers who are present with them when they actually self-administer and ingest the medication.
So in the event that law enforcement responds to a location where someone has chosen the End-of-Life Option Act, and they may be greeted at the door by a family member that tells law enforcement that that's the case, and that everything is okay and they don't want law enforcement's involvement, the family has a right to do that. There's no reason for law enforcement to force the issue and try to make entry in those circumstances.
And as you arrive, you're starting to notice things about the environment that you're in. It's calm. There's not a lot of yelling. Somebody greets you at the door. They're conversant. They're cooperative. They explain to you what's going on. All of those things start to render a picture that makes sense based on what you're seeing in the environment and what you're hearing from the person that is meeting you at the door.
One question that may arise is whether or not an officer has a legal right to enter into the residence. Under the Fourth Amendment, circumstances that require exigency may be involved in one of these cases. It will be up to the officer to determine whether they have specific, articulable suspicion documented in facts that allow them to enter into the residence under the Fourth Amendment.
In the event you are invited into a home where someone is exercising the End-of-Life Option Act, look or ask for paperwork such as a DNR or a POLST. These documents usually indicate that someone was terminally ill and will also help guide you in what type of care you can render if the family asks for assistance. A DNR is a commonly used document, but understanding what a POLST is and what it looks like is important in how you proceed.
And DNR means do not resuscitate. So if the patient were to stop breathing or stop pulsating, that tells any EMS personnel that would be arriving or police that the patient is not interested in having any heroic measures or resuscitative measures taking place. They don't want to be intubated. They don't want CPR. POLST is a physician's order for life-sustaining treatment. And it's a combination document. There's two check boxes. One says, do not resuscitate. If they didn't check the DNR box, there's other boxes below that, and this is where we come to the orders that the physician has written for life-sustaining treatment. They can be significant orders, or it can be palliative measures to keep them comfortable, maybe pain-free with some pain medication, or we're going to give them fluids, IV fluids or oral fluids, things of that nature. So it's basically a doctor stating to the EMS personnel, this is what's transpiring, why the patient is alive.
So if law enforcement, fire, and EMS are on scene and have been asked to render care by the family members to a patient who has chosen to end their life, a resource that they could access in order to gain further information about where to go or what to do next might be the paramedic space station medical director.
The people who are in the room with the decedent will always remember the reaction of the law enforcement officers and first responders who walked into the room, assuming, as it will be in most cases, if not all cases, that this was what the decedent wanted. But the family member is still feeling the pain and anguish and guilt of the experience of having lost a loved one. And when a first responder, be it a law enforcement officer, a paramedic, a firefighter, walks in and they fill the room with judgment in their attitude, in their questions, that's going to stay with the decedent's family and friends forever. And that's not fair. It's not law enforcement's job to pass judgment in a situation like that. It is their job to be a public servant and to support the decision of the decedent because that is the law.
The End-of-Life Option Act medication is prescribed with the goal of having the patient peacefully fall asleep within 5 minutes and then to pass in 20 minutes to an hour. Almost without exception, people choose to self-administer the medication in their own homes. The law is written to be very family-centric and to be a personal and very profound situation. Do your best to determine if there appears to be any criminal intent. If not, do your absolute best to respect the family's privacy. Next, what to do when family members don't agree and how you can most effectively help the situation.
So there may be circumstances where you respond to an incident and the person who's chosen the End-of-Life Option Act is alive. We could be responding to a family dispute where family members don't agree that this is the best course of action for that person. But the reality is that it's their individual choice, and the family members need to learn to accept that, as difficult as it may be.
Families are dynamic. Having a terminally ill family member is often very stressful. Sometimes, unfortunately, conflict and chaos can arise. Law enforcement is trained in how to approach a possibly volatile situation, so knowing the law and being able to explain the End-of-Life Option Act to uncertain family members will help to de-escalate the scene where there is disagreement and misunderstanding.
1 Paul 1, active disturbance with female yelling heard at 5610 La Playa Court. Confirm one of you are CIT.
1 Paul 1, affirmative. Sanchez is CIT, en route.
This is our mother. No, this is not you. This is your mother, Hannah. You always act as though everything's about you. You've got to calm down. Why do I have to calm down? You're trying to kill our mother. Absolutely not. Yes, you are. Ridiculous. Shelby. Why is that ridiculous? Did you not take her to a doctor and get her medication to kill her? Listen to me. How else do you describe that?
Shelby.
Why do I have to listen to you?
The doctor.
When are you going to listen to me?
She chose this, Shelby.
No, she didn't.
This
You
is
chose
her
this for her.
decision.
Absolutely. Yes, you
not.
did.
I'm
This
the
was your
one
case. I get our mother. I am glad you're here.
Hi, River City Police, man. My name is Officer Sanchez. We got a call of a disturbance.
Well, what's going on is I just found out that my sister's talking my mother into killing herself.
Okay, do me a favor. Go ahead and step outside for me.
Okay.
What's happening?
Well, what's happening is I just found out that my sister took our mother to a doctor to get some medication to end her life. I can't believe this is happening.
Okay. Try to remain calm, okay? So we can get to the bottom of this, all right? Okay. Is your mother sick?
Well, yes, she is. She's got end-stage cancer, and the doctor says she may only have a few months left.
Okay.
But I am not ready for her to go.
Okay.
Okay?
And try to stay calm, okay? Is your mother inside the house right now?
Yes, she's
Okay.
in there with my sister right now.
Okay.
You know, how can that be legal? How can they do this to me? Okay, you need to stop this, okay?
Okay. If you promise me that you can stay calm, okay? Stay out here with my partners, this is Officer Rogers. I'll go inside and I'll talk to them, okay?
Okay.
Just do me a favor, step over here. Rogers, I'm gonna go inside.
All right, absolutely. All right, we're gonna get this all taken care of. Don't you worry.
Hello, River City Police.
Come in. Hannah. It's okay, Mom. I'll take care of it. It's okay.
Hi, I'm Officer Sanchez. What's your name?
Hannah, and this is my mom, Allison.
Hi, Hannah. Listen, is there anybody else inside the house, or is
No.
it just the two of you?
It's just me and my mom.
Okay. Tell me, what's going on with your sister? Why is she so upset?
Shelby always does this. It's always about her. My mother is terminally ill, and this is her wish. I let Shelby know that she'd made the decision to use the end-of-life option, and she doesn't agree,
Okay.
and so she's just here upsetting our mother.
I'm such a bad person? Hannah, I'm the one who wants to save our mother.
See, it's all about her.
I just don't want you girls to fight. It's my choice. I'm just so tired, Hannah.
Listen, my mom is sick and she's in pain. She went to the doctor. She asked for a prescription under the End-of-Life Option Act so that if her suffering became unbearable, she could use it. Well, it's become unbearable and she's just had enough.
And do you have any paperwork for this?
I don't remember them giving us any paperwork, but she signed something and we gave it to the doctor. But she does have a DNR.
Is there anything we can do for her right now? Does she need any medical assistance or anything?
You know, what would be the most helpful, officer, is if you and your partner could just talk to Shelby and try to explain this to her.
Sure. Okay, I'll go talk to your sister, okay?
Thank you.
And I got a sister that's just not. Are you gonna stop this?
Rogers, did you get some of that?
Yes. Shelby, we understand that you're upset. Did you know that your mom got medication from her doctor under the End of Life Option Act?
Well, yes, but I didn't think she would actually take it. She said, you know, that it would just make her feel better to have it around the house, you know?
Shelby, your mom has a terminal illness, and that's enough to make anybody upset. But we did hear her say that she wants to do this, and she has every right to do so.
Yes, but I don't want to lose my mom.
And I can't begin to imagine how you're feeling right now. But you have to understand, this isn't your decision. And it's not your sister's decision. It is your mother's legal right.
I'm just not ready to lose her, and I can't believe this is happening, you know?
Absolutely.
Can I go talk to my mom?
Absolutely. And before we leave here today, I'm going to give you my business card and a list of resources for you and your family.
Great, thank you. Great, thank you.
Okay, let's talk about this scenario. Do you think it went well?
I think it did, especially when they first got there. One of the main things they try to do is keep her calm, try to calm her down. And then at the end, I like how they kind of educated her and explained to her and even offered resources regarding this option. So maybe that's a way to help her out and help her understand and maybe help her cope with their mom's illness.
Good. Anything else?
No, it's more of a mediation at that point and just trying to explain the legal side of it. I think that's what the initial sister who was upset, who answered the door, that was her concern, is that in her mind that needed to be stopped, and he needed to kind of educate her that it's a legal option that that patient has the right to exercise.
What did you think about their tactics during the investigation? What did you guys notice about that, tactically wise, when their investigation was going on? See anything there that jumped out at you?
I think first thing that they did was get the sister, the one that was yelling, the one that seemed more upset, get her out of the house, and then kind of separate them, maybe to try to de-escalate the situation.
Perfect. Obviously, the family here is having, the two sisters are having a dispute. Even though the one sister tells the officer at the door that she knows her mom went and got the medication, is there a strong possibility that not all family members are going to know that their loved one opted to use the End of Life Option Act?
Yeah, there's a strong possibility that maybe they wouldn't let all their family members know. Just a simple fact, because there's some maybe family members that could handle the situation better than others.
So with that, it's probably going to be our job to most likely educate other family members, correct?
And it's just it's an emotional reaction to seeing that a loved one is dying, and that's a reaction. Some people want to see their loved one pass easier, and some people want to hold on till the very end, no matter what the suffering is, just because they're not ready to let go.
Good point. All right. When they got the call as far as they're responding to this situation, the dispatcher had mentioned CIT. Is somebody CIT trained? Does everyone know what a CIT trained is?
It's someone who's trained in the crisis intervention team for our crisis intervention tactics. They're kind of there to de-escalate a situation. It doesn't always have to do with anything that's like mental illness or anything like that, but it has to do with maybe something that more times required than a patrol officer can give. It is a police officer who can go to these type of calls and try and mediate with the family and try and de-escalate, especially the one sister who was really upset about it, and try and get her to kind of understand what's going on and how to get her to understand that this is an option that her mom wants to exercise.
How important do you think in this investigation or this incident was it that the mom was awake and she actually said, "This is my choice"? How is that pretty relative?
Yeah, it lowers your level of suspicion of any criminal act. Obviously, I saw in the video there's a DNR right above the elderly woman.
Oh, good catch.
So it lowers your the main part is lowers your level of suspicion.
Does everybody know what a DNR is?
No, I have no idea what a DNR is.
Sergeant, DNR is a do not resuscitate.
Okay.
And it can be written or a verbal form. It's generally with somebody who's terminally ill or they're expecting to have some sort of medical emergency and they don't want to be revived or have any life-saving efforts placed on them. They'll have a DNR from their physician that they've signed that says do not resuscitate under any circumstances.
Okay, perfect.
And in this situation, it wasn't exactly relevant because the patient was not in medical distress. She was still alive and speaking.
Okay, all right. Okay, so once this call is completely done, are we going to document it?
Maybe some will, some won't. In this case, I probably would. And even if it's just a miscellaneous incident, just to kind of document that you've already gone over the interview you had even with the patient, as brief as it was, with her stating her wishes, confirming she has a terminal illness, and this may be something she chooses to pursue. I mean, maybe she decides to use that option to end her life. And for a responding officer who hasn't been there, because maybe it'll be a day you're not there, it'll be easier for them to reference back to it and see that you've already kind of completed the investigation part of it.
Okay, all right. Any other comments or questions on this particular scenario, guys? All right, well, hey, that was a pretty good scenario. Let's go ahead and grab our units and go 10-8.
Okay.
Healthcare is something that is a very individual and typically private component of someone's life. Patients may choose to exercise the option for the End of Life Act with not advising any of their family members.
I mean, law enforcement's familiar with dealing with conflict between family members that don't agree necessarily with whatever's taking place, and this is no different. Be a mediator or provide them with some information that, if they're trying to, if there's a sibling or somebody doesn't think that it's right, then, point them in the right direction that maybe they can, look at that information to find out, oh yes, that this is allowable.
Law enforcement is becoming not only the advocates for the patient in situations where there is marked disagreement between family members, and will have to take it upon themselves to educate the family members who don't understand the patient's rights, who doesn't understand the patient's will that has been conveyed to the physician themselves.
I think what's important for law enforcement to remember is when they make contact, they need to diffuse the situation and de-escalate. The biggest asset that you have for de-escalation is calming the situation. And what we talk about in crisis intervention team training is creating time and space, slowing things down and maintaining a safe distance between you and that person. Because when a person's in a crisis state and they're agitated, they're not hearing what you're saying.
Medical aid in dying is authorized in 5 states currently, and it has been in existence as an important palliative care option for terminally ill patients for a combined 30 years across those states. And it's really important to note that in those combined 30 years, there's not been a documented instance of abuse or coercion of any of the patients who have chosen this option.
The rules are not black and white. Determining whether coercion or undue influence was used by a family member to make or force the individual to use life-ending drugs is not necessarily as simple as it seems from the statute.
Friends of mine who practice probate law are very concerned about the undue influence. Their biggest fear and concern is that children who stand to inherit from their family will in some way use undue influence to get their parents to agree to this option in an effort to get them money or in an effort to stop paying for costly care. And that is going to be something that we're going to have to look at very closely. But that is one of the things about this law that I really appreciate, because there is time, there is reflection, there are discussions. So I think there are a number of things that are built in. I think the fact that there are 2 doctors, that it has to be both oral and in writing, the fact that a mental health professional can weigh in and should weigh in if there's any question. All of that suggests that there are enough systems built in to secure. The law is very well written for those purposes.
When a law enforcement officer responds to that type of call, I think at a very minimum there should at least be some type of a
incident report or a field contact card completed so that we have documentation that this is a residence where someone lives currently that may be choosing the End-of-Life Option Act. That becomes important later if law enforcement responds maybe weeks later and finds that that person is now deceased. That little bit of information will be very beneficial for any follow-up investigations that occur.
If the person has not taken the medication yet, then before you leave, just make sure that the family has been asked about, has the mortuary been contacted, and have you made arrangements? And if not, then provide that suggestion that they can, call the proper people so that the police department doesn't have to come back out.
So I think it's important if you have the opportunity to talk to someone who's chosen the End-of-Life Option Act is to verify that it is their choice. Ask them if they're aware of what the circumstances are and that this is something that they want to do.
We need to remember that the patient has lawfully chosen to access medications to end their life under the End-of-Life Option Act, and then we need to counsel the family.
Not all families have the systems in place to make a smooth transition after the death of a loved one. Offering resources and giving them the tools to make the next step easier is a basic aid that you can provide. In our final section, what if the death is suspicious? It's always necessary to do a full investigation.
We consider staying on the phone with a reporting party just like standing there holding somebody's hand until somebody else can render comfort. And that helps the caller do something and talk to somebody while they're waiting for resources to arrive. It keeps the scene a lot calmer for the first responders.
River City 911, what are you reporting?
My dad is dead. My sister called me to come over. It looks like it's been a while.
And what's the address?
749 Oleander Place.
What makes you think he's dead?
Well, he's not moving and he's blue.
Tell me exactly what happened.
My sister's here. She said that my dad chose to end his life. I don't believe her.
Sir, I'm sending the sheriff and paramedics. I'm going to give you instructions for CPR.
No, I don't want to. Believe me, he's dead.
Are you close enough to check his breathing?
Officers, I'm glad you're here. I'm Fan Chen, and this is my sister Karen.
I understand you called 911 to report a death. Can you tell me what happened?
Yeah, I live in the city now, and my sister called to say she checked on our dad, and he was dead. I got here as soon as I could.
Dad's been sick.
Yeah, but not to the point of dying. I just saw him a month ago, and he was doing well. Then a month later, he's dead. You had something to do with this.
Would you like to come in? I can explain.
Yes, we will. Before we do, is there anybody else in the house?
No, it's just us.
Okay.
He's in the living room.
Do you mind if I go check on him?
Sure.
Paul 5. 31 Paul 5, can you notify 30 Paul Sam to confirm 1144? Can you cancel the medics, please? Ma'am, can you tell me what happened? When was the last time you saw your father?
Last Wednesday, I try to drop in on him every few days or so, and he never comes to see him. Our dad, he had advanced liver disease, and he asked me a month ago to take him to this doctor, and he just wanted that option to end his life.
There's no way Dad would do something like this. This isn't our culture. This shames our family. This never would have been an option for him. Karen, I know you had something to do with this.
Hey, I am the one who's here and checks on him, okay? I'm the one who brings him to the grocery store, to the doctor. I do everything there has to be done. So this is what he wanted. I just didn't expect him to do it so soon. But I agree that a month ago he was doing well, and then a few days ago when I came by, he didn't seem like himself, so I started talking to him about getting 24-hour care, but he just didn't want someone babysitting him. He just didn't want to burden us.
When did you help him fill his prescription?
I didn't. I took him to the doctor, and he didn't want me to involve, so I never took him to the pharmacy. I just saw the pills overnighted to him.
Do you have the number of that doctor?
No, I don't have the number, but I know the doctor's name is Dr. Preminger.
Tyler, can you look up that number for Dr. Preminger and see if we can verify?
No problem. Is that the one on Sycamore?
Yeah. Yes, it is.
Okay. Excuse me for a minute. Hi, Dr. Preminger, please. Hi, this is Deputy Bancroft with the River County Sheriff's Department. I'm at the residence of one of your patients, Lee Chen. He is deceased, and his daughter told me that he has chosen the End of Life Option Act. I just wanted to verify this with you. Okay. Yeah. Can you confirm for me that you wrote him the prescription? Okay. I just had a couple more questions in regards to his medications.
Anything suspicious here?
I think at first it's, you have the RPU saying that he doesn't believe his sister, that she had something to do with it. He doesn't ever really specify what or why or give a motive, but I think her answer is pretty clear, pretty quick, that this is something that the father chose to do, and she just was his caretaker, but he chose to do this kind of on his own. So since she had the doctor's name, they were able to contact him and verify that that's what happened. It kind of takes away any suspicion pretty quickly.
Would you guys do anything differently as far as separating the brother and sister, just for your own safety, or you guys are kind of okay with the way the way the scenario went down? Any thoughts on that?
Well, they weren't being aggressive. He's just upset, and I think one important part that we kind of have to remember, kind of like with a lot of radio calls, is he brings up the cultural aspect of it. That in their culture, it wouldn't be something that would be encouraged. But he's not angry at her. He's just kind of going over their family beliefs. So it kind of makes it to where he's not being aggressive or a danger. It never hurts to separate. I mean, it kind of takes the factor out of it. But in that kind of instance, you're kind of hearing out why he's upset in the first place.
What are some of the things we can do?
Well, it's like our number one question I think we ask a lot when we go, especially on rescues, is what's the medical history? If you start hearing someone, family or friends, start talking about a terminal illness, it may be something that we need to have in the back of our mind thinking, okay, maybe this is an option that they exercise, especially if that's their medical history.
Oh, yeah, that's perfectly said. Okay, so let's just, this scenario was pretty good. But the one deputy got a hold of the doctor, right away, confirmed that the patient utilized the End of Life Option Act. Let's just say we can't get a hold of the doctor. What else can we do?
Maybe I would suggest calling the pharmacy, see if you can get a hold of them and confirm it's the End of Life Option Act medication.
Oh.
If you have a bottle there or something, you can confirm that they got the prescription.
That'd be a good idea. Yeah, call the pharmacy and ask them if these meds that are in your possession are the ones that they would prescribe for end of life.
Correct.
What was her surprise regarding her father? Did anyone catch that surprise?
She didn't take him to the pharmacy.
And
so she didn't know he had the prescription.
And did she say, did she indicate how her father got the medication? Did anyone catch that?
It was overnighted to him or shipped to him.
Yeah, it was overnighted, shipped to him. I would have thought that they'd have to go to the pharmacy as well. I didn't realize that you can actually get the meds overnighted to you. So that's actually different. Well, let me ask you this: would we treat this investigation any differently than any other death investigation?
Sure. This is a non-witnessed end-of-life option, so doing your due diligence with your paperwork and checking with the doctor and confirming everything that the family's telling you is important.
Okay.
And it's very likely that some patients may choose to do this in private and not notify people.
Okay. It's actually a pretty good scenario because this was one of the ones where nobody was on scene and daughter found, called the brother, so kind of a little bit raises our level of suspicion a little bit more. So what do you think about calling the coroner? Should we call the coroner?
On this one, I would call the coroner just to kind of give the circumstances. This one's a little different than when all the families are around him at the time of death. Just run the circumstances by him and see what they say.
That they can actually probably maybe even give us some guidance, right?
Yeah, and let them make that determination.
Perfect. All right. Hey, well, I really appreciate you guys being interactive on this one. This one actually was a pretty good one. You guys have any comments or questions regarding this scenario? No. All right. Well, hey, you guys be safe out there. I'll see you out there.
So as far as handling a death investigation, if law enforcement responds, they're going to handle it the same way that they normally would. It's just if it's an End-of-Life Option Act case, they're going to take into consideration that it's a legal process. It's something that someone has taken the time to consult with doctors and follow state law procedures so that they can legally end their life.
Just with any other case that we go investigate and are on scene with, you would look at all of the elements or the totality of the circumstances in order to determine which investigative path you would move forward on.
In cases where we're not able to establish that all the criteria for the end-of-life option are confirmed, or that there's a doctor that's willing to sign the death certificates, then those cases would become a coroner's case, and then they would do their investigation to determine cause and manner.
The only state reporting that's required is from the physician and from the pharmacist. So if an officer is called to a home where someone is utilizing medical aid in dying, there is no requirement that the officer or the first responder report anything to the Department of Health about the situation. I would just want to emphasize that it is not the officer's responsibility to make sure that every eligibility requirement, every qualification requirement under the End-of-Life Option Act has been followed. That is not the responsibility of law enforcement.
There are some cultures that would think that the End-of-Life Option Act would be against their religion or their beliefs, and we need to be heightened and aware of the sensitivity that they have.
Many of us thought there would be one particular drug. It could be a whole array of different medications that don't stand out whatsoever within a large collection of medications you may see with someone with terminal illness.
So when the officer is looking at the prescription, it will not say End-of-Life Option Act. It will not say medical aid in dying. So what the officer will have to do is call the pharmacy and ask if this prescription was written for the End-of-Life Option Act or for medical aid in dying. Now, the pharmacist may or may not confirm that the prescription was written for that purpose, but it's at least one avenue to try.
In death investigations, often it is a decision by the investigating law enforcement agency or the coroner who's going to actually be responsible for the medication. And we are taking medication traditionally just to document it and then to dispose of it to ensure that it doesn't get back out on the street.
If we're responding out on a dead body, we're going to do an investigation to determine whether or not it's an attended death or unattended. And attended just means that there's a doctor that was treating this individual. Doesn't mean they were present at the time, but they were treating them. They've seen him in the last 20 days, and that they're willing to sign the death certificate because the reason the person died was a result of the illness that they had.
There haven't been other problems, other criminal cases coming out of this law in the other states, but I would expect in California there just might be, just because of the number of cases there will be, and the fact that California is a litigious state. So things could happen here, so I think it'll be the way it's been in other states, but bigger.
One of the things that's important about the way that this law was written as far as the felony violations is it has to be against, you have to be able to show that it was against the will of the individual and that they did it without their consent or without their knowledge. That may be difficult to prove in these cases because if the act is completed, we don't have that individual anymore as a witness, and we won't know exactly what their intent was and whether or not the person was complying with the intent of the individual or not.
If they don't have reasonable suspicion that a crime has been committed, then their job is to comfort the family and friends and leave as soon as possible. They weren't invited. They weren't a family member or friend of the decedent. They intruded upon the scene if no crime has been committed.
The End-of-Life Option Act is a sensitive subject for some. Not everyone agrees with this law. Nonetheless, it is the law. It is written to provide a terminally ill person the option to choose their own path when facing death. It allows them to die with dignity and on their own terms when the terminal illness has taken their strength to live. Those that opted to participate in the End of Life Option Act had to face the fact that they were diagnosed as terminally ill. They were given the news that they had lost their fight with whatever battle they were waging. That was the first step. Then they had to educate themselves and go through the necessary and required process in order to exercise the End of Life Option Act. Now, in the state of California, terminally ill people have the right to choose when to die. It is important to understand this law and appreciate that it has been an exhausting and difficult time for those involved. Show compassion to all parties, but at the same time, be sure to look at each situation with an investigative eye. Always be an advocate for the terminally ill, whether deceased or still living. We hope that this training video has given you some insight on the law associated with the End of Life Option Act. I'm Mark Bailey, and on behalf of the Commission on Peace Officer Standards and Training, we'd like to thank you for watching this program. I encourage you now to take a moment to listen to some final thoughts from our subject matter experts.